everyone, to our second Tuesday Times Roundtable event of the academic year. My name is Stephanie Dosher, and I'm the Associate Director of the Office of Global Learning Initiatives. And we are so proud to be able to sponsor this and so many other events and work with faculty across all the departments of the university to globalize the courses that you take, and so that we can have really globally aware, global students with a global perspective, and students who are global engaged, graduates from FIU, and really become known for providing that type of education for you. We have a fascinating topic to discuss today. Very interesting to me, especially because I was just talking with someone in the audience. I have a son who's about to enter high school. And so this is top priority for me, is what is his high school experience going to be like? And I imagine all of you have interest in this topic because you've all been to high school? Yeah? Okay, so we all have something to say about this topic. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our moderators, and then they're going to introduce the other honored guests that we have today. So we have with us today Franklin McCune of the Center for Leadership and Service. Absolutely. He holds a Bachelor's of Science in Physical Education and a Master of Science in Higher Education Administration from here at FIU. He began his student affairs career in 2006 as a graduate assistant for the FIU football team, and eventually transitioned to the Center for Leadership and Service and found a true passion for leadership development, service, and civic engagement. Following graduate school, Franklin was hired in 2008 as the Assistant Director of the William R. Butler Center for Volunteer Service and Learning Development at the University of Miami, where he thoroughly enjoyed his time. But he came back to us. He continued to follow his passion for service and leadership while advising numerous student organizations and office initiatives. He was then hired in February of 2011 as the Assistant Director of the Center for Leadership and Service here at FIU, bringing him back to his alma mater. Franklin is a proud lifetime alumni member of the FIU Alumni Association, which hopefully all of you are or will be members of. And he's a member of the Board of Directors of the FIU Alumni Association. He's also a graduate of the Leadership Miami program. He continued with his passion for Leadership Miami by serving on the Planning Committee for Leadership Miami this past year. He's engaged to the love of his life, Ms. Catherine Bass, and his passion for student development and college life inspires a whole new generation of college students. Go Golden Panthers. All right, we also have with us today Byron Anderson. He is the recruitment manager for City Year Miami. A Los Angeles native, Byron is a recipient of the Posse Foundation Scholarship and received his bachelor's in sociology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Great university, truly great university. Byron has been with City Year for the past 3 years, in which he started his journey as a City Year Corps member in Los Angeles. He progressed to become a founding team leader in Milwaukee and was subsequently promoted to recruitment manager here for City Year in Miami. So that's a little bit of insight into these gentlemen, their varied careers, and you might have some questions for them about their own career development. But for now, we'll have you take it away with our topic for today. Thank you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. The first thing I realized is my bio is really long, so I probably need to cut that down just a little bit. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for introducing us here. Today, we're excited to be here today. We decided to take this idea of the Tuesday Times Roundtable to a little bit different idea. We're going to bring in some unbelievable panel discussion guests to talk to you guys about this idea of American exceptionalism. So in front of you, you have the article that we did some research on. So everything we're going to be talking about today is in reference to this article, where it's like, we're number one. Oh, wait, maybe not number one. So we're going to reference that as we talk about it here today. The article states that we're not exceptional in all categories, but we are exceptional in some of them. So the goal today is to talk about kind of why we feel that America is great in one category and not great in another. Maybe why it's a little bit difficult sometimes for us to gauge our own misfortunes and how we're not doing so great about that. So specifically, we're going to talk today about education. I think that's really important, and all the people we have on our panel today are working on the ground in nonprofits with the idea of high school retention and education right here in Miami-Dade County. So it's a great opportunity for us to engage in that discussion. So I'm going to let Byron jump in now.
Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Byron Anderson. And the article that we're going to be discussing is the belief that the United States is number one. And in a lot of categories, we're definitely not. If I can throw some numbers at you, for example, U.S. is number 27th in math in the world. And that's a harsh reality to accept when we're trying to figure out what our next steps is as a country and what direction we're actually heading into. So we've invited some guest speakers to have that discussion and create this dialogue. And definitely want your input. So I preface this by saying this is your time to shine. We want to hear your thoughts and your opinions around this topic, especially about American exceptionalism and just about high school and how you feel about the status of Miami-Dade County and our country and how that compares to a global scale. So if you're not comfortable, I know Franklin will talk about it a little bit later, but if you're not comfortable, standing up and asking a question, we'll have some Twitter, including the hashtag, and we'll read those questions. But also, we encourage you just to kind of speak your mind freely and really share, what your thoughts are about this. So to introduce our panelists, first we have Raquel Figueroa. She's a program director from College Summit, Florida. And what we'll do is we'll have you speak about, the type of work that you're doing in the community, and we'll go from there.
Good afternoon. So College Summit is a national nonprofit organization, and our background music too. Let's try this again. And so what we do is we try and increase the college enrollment rate in the schools and districts that we partner with. We do this by providing schools with a framework and a structure that they then own. So we help the schools build the capacity to have more college access professionals in their building. And we also train students, influential students, to be leaders in their schools and help to shift the culture in their schools. And as we know, culture shift is a very, very difficult thing. So we try and be in schools, anywhere from 3 to 7 years, and then the expectation is that we can leave and provide them with the tools and they can carry on themselves because they built that culture that works for them and for their students.
Thank you. Next, we have Keith or Fletcher. He's the executive director of uAspire Miami.
Yeah, thank you. And well, good afternoon, everyone. I am, as the new kid on the block, I'm kind of humbled to be sitting here with such powerhouses as College Summit and City Year, and they certainly have a much longer tenure locally to talk about than I do. But I'm with uAspire. It's a Boston-based company, and what we really focus on is providing the very best in resources and advice around college affordability. So what do? We basically want to get you to and through college with the least amount of debt. How many people think that's a pretty good thing, right? Yeah, right? We have really 4 parts to our work. The bulk of our work focuses on a high school senior in the 12th grade. We're going to help you complete the FAFSA, the CSS profile, all your verification paperwork, whether you're documented or not. We're going to walk you through that process to figure out what you're eligible for. We then do an award letter analysis when you get into schools to help you figure out what it's really going to cost to go to that school. Lots of schools kind of are pretty predatory in that way and try to hide the cost. So we help you figure that out. We do a loan analysis for you. So we help you understand the difference between loan and scholarship, the economic impact of certain loans in light of your chosen major. I worked at the University of Miami for 9.5 years. I worked here for a little over a year. I love the University of Miami, but if you want to be an elementary school teacher and you're going to UM without these scholarships, you probably need to be committed to paying for that for the rest of your career, right? We also do private scholarship search, and we round that out with actually calling up the schools our students get into and advocating on behalf of students for better financial packages. We do early financial literacy that starts as early as the 6th grade, and it's curriculum in 9th, 10th, and 11th that teaches kids and families about college affordability, basic financial literacy. We have another program that focuses from your end of your high school senior year to the start of college to do away with what's called summer melt. So if you're college eligible and you paid a deposit, that you actually show up on campus and go to class. And the final piece of what we do is we continue to offer you that financial backbone and support all the way until you graduate from college. Again, so I don't know if you guys know this, but the average student across all incomes graduates almost $30,000 in debt and with 3.8 credit cards, which either means that you maxed out the first 3 or you like the little t-shirt that you get under the tent as you're walking into GC, right? So we try to mitigate those. The bulk of our work does focus on first generation and low to moderate income students, but we'll work with anyone, and our services are free. But we are launching in Miami currently this year. So, thank you.
Thank you, Fletch. Lastly, we have Saifi Shuf, and he is the executive director of City Year Miami.
Thanks so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be here at FIU alongside such great panelists and with all of you talking about this great article and having what I hope will be a lively conversation. Briefly, I'm fortunate to be able to be a part of an organization called City Year. I know we're going to cue up a video in a little bit that's going to provide a little context of the work of the organization. But at its heart, what City Year does is it unites 17 to 24-year-olds to do a powerful year of service in America's most challenged schools as tutors, mentors, and role models. An urban Peace Corps, if you will. And within the context of that, its work is specifically laser-sharp focused on providing extra people power to those students who are at greatest risk for dropping out of high school, based upon the research which shows that if you're able to address attendance, behavior, and course performance in math and English, that you can actually provide and be a resource or a buffer, if you will, from students who are at risk from dropping out of high school. So City Year is a national organization in 26 cities around the world. 2 of them are international, 24 of them are right here in the United States. And at its heart, City Year was founded by two Harvard Law grads who were college roommates around the notion that they were really at a point in their career of being at that cross-section of inspiration and outrage, and they wanted to find a way to tap into the power of America's young people, and that really one of the greatest sources of energy that we have in our country is tapping into that idealism of young people. So I know we're going to have a broader conversation here today. I'm excited to share a little bit about the work that we do in addressing some of the issues we're discussing, and how it is that this work is part of a collaborative, and that there's no one organizational silver bullet in tackling these tough issues.
All right, thank you guys. We appreciate that. We appreciate you guys being here to talk about this topic with us. Real fast before we show you this quick video on exactly the work that City Year does, and the goal of the video is to sort of frame your idea of education, about the impact of high school retention, which all these wonderful panel speakers are working directly in. Couple walkaways, okay? We want you guys to walk away from today's session with a few things. Number one, a higher interest in what's happening around the world elsewhere, and also an understanding of the great work that we're currently doing in the community. Because we felt after reading this article that yes, it keeps saying like, yeah, we're number one, but we're not. But these fine individuals are right here are working to make us number one. So that's really important to us. So we're going to show you a quick video that talks more about exactly what City Year does.
So, saw the video. Now, just kind of give you a reminder about the hashtag. If you don't, we want to make sure that this is a dialogue and that you guys are, speaking freely about, your opinions about this topic, because we really hope that we can, get your perspective on, what American exceptionalism is to you. So just remember the hashtag is hashtag FIUTTR. You can tweet that and put your questions on there. Feel free to stand up and ask questions. I'm going to be walking around with the microphone. We will continue the conversation like that, okay? Cool?
All right, well, we felt to get the conversation started, we're going to go ahead and ask our panel one quick question here, and then we're going to turn it around and we're going to ask you guys some questions. So based on your experiences, questions you guys may have, and then it's really going to be an open discussion. If you have a question, we have some unbelievable people down here in front. This is an opportunity for you guys to ask questions specifically about education, high school retention, and things maybe you saw in the article or questions you guys may have from it. So the first question I'm going to pose to my panel, I'll let each one of you guys sort of take it on, is how is your individual organization investing in teacher education?
So we do provide, one of the tools that we provide to the schools is ongoing professional development and coaching throughout the school year. So we actually have platform training around the curriculum. So throughout the school year, teachers are implementing a curriculum. And in the schools that we're in Miami, that we actually are partnering with City Year and same school with uAspire as well. We have 9th and 11th and 12th grade curriculum actually being rolled out to students through a credit-bearing class. And the teachers need to learn how to deliver the curriculum, how to facilitate it. So we actually do one platform training in the summer, and then we do 2 follow-up professional developments, and then we have some practitioner managers on the ground in the schools week-to-week coaching educators on how to facilitate and deliver curriculum. And that's our investment to teacher development. And then there's a shift really in how we, the curriculum that we provide. Most teachers are used to direct teaching, and the shift that we provide for them through the curriculum is becoming more of a connector and a facilitator in the classroom, as opposed to being a direct teaching teacher, so that they're guiding students to be part of the conversation, be part of facilitating their own experience and learning experience in the classroom.
Sure, I think that we do a fairly limited amount in terms of investing in teachers. We do one sort of professional development with what would be the equivalent of each semester to get teachers sort of aware of our work and some of the basics around college affordability. I think for us, sort of our approach is that we don't pretend to be anything that we're not. So we are not the full spectrum of college access. We are not mentors and tutors. There are other people, quite frankly, who do that better than us, right? So we try to really wholly subscribe to this, and I'm sure Sipes speaks this into existence much better than I, but to this idea of collective impact, and the rising tide raises all ships. So we kind of do it 2 ways. We try to take, we mostly work through guidance counselors, CAP advisors, and student services folks, and we try to take the piece of college affordability off of people's plates, because we believe that we have the most expertise in that narrow slice. We kind of pose it like this: outside of your house, it's probably the biggest investment you make in your life, and you make it at 16 or 17 years old, and particularly if your parents didn't go to college, you're going to do it with limited support, guidance, and access to information. So we try to take that one little slice off the pie, alleviate that what is often the most frustrating, complex, and difficult piece of someone's job off of their plate, and let them do what they're good at. So you think about a guidance counselor in the school who has 600 kids, 800 kids that they're responsible for here in Miami-Dade College. If we can take off that one little piece and let them focus on helping kids make their college list or all the other social and other issues they may be dealing with, then we make the school culture better. The other thing that we believe that we do, especially with our early work, that I think in sort of a roundabout way helps teachers, is that I believe that if you can empower a young person with the belief that college is attainable and college is an option for them, then you see engagement go up, you see attendance go up, you see all those pieces, you see the investment from the kid in their own learning go up, which I think makes the teacher's job easier.
to be honest about this answer, I think the truth is that in our work, we are wholly focused on the amelioration of the condition of students in schools. So we're not really that focused on teachers. We do work with teachers in classrooms to sort of get them to better understand how to leverage the power of a city year core member and a city year team in their school. But the focus on teachers is not really a big part of our work. I think we all sort of individually and as citizens of the community have a role to play in how do we better support and resource investments in teachers, but not really sort of a deep part of the organizational fabric of what City Years is working on.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello? Okay, thank you. So some questions for the students. We want to definitely get you guys talking. So, according to Miami-Dade County Public School District, which is the 4th largest school district in the United States, reports that in 2010-2011, our county's graduation rate is 77%. It also states that there are 15 schools in the school district that produce over 50% of the dropouts. How do you see this impacting our community, and if this trend continues, what do you see happening?
Wait, no, I was going to ask you if you can repeat the
Yeah.
last part, please.
The last part?
Yeah, the 15%.
Yeah, so it also states that there are 15 schools in the district that produce over 50% of the dropouts in the county. How do you see this impacting our community if the trend continues? Who's going to be brave enough to answer?
All right, cool.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm from here, so I don't really know much about Miami, but just from what you said, of course, if you're a student and you're surrounded on a daily basis with those type of people who aren't really motivated to go to school or who feel as if, like you said, college is an option for them, you're going to start being influenced by that, and you yourself are most likely not going to work as hard to fulfill whatever goals you have. It's usually typically for students, even in college now, whoever you're surrounded with on a daily basis, you start to take on their actions or, just have their perceptions on certain things. So, I feel like it's only get worse if no one in the school itself or the teachers themselves start stepping up. Of course, you still need to have also your students who are willing to step up and say, all right, hey, if you ever need help, then I will do that for you. Or, hey, let's put this group together. Or just have those support systems in the school, because the people, I feel like students themselves, even though, yes, teachers are helpful and they do help to motivate and enrich your learning and all that other stuff, I feel like the students themselves aren't stepping up, then there's really not going to be a change, because you yourself in the age group have a better difference, you have a better impact on other students around you.
Good, we appreciate that.
Kind of taking up what she said, I'm kind of similar to her. I'm not from Miami. But one thing that I just thought of with the statistics is that, obviously it's these specific schools that implies specific geographical areas. And a lot of people don't move too far from where they're at. So you get people who are stuck where they are, they have no education, and they're only around the same people like she was discussing. Now, as you kind of look at it from a generational point of view, you get people who came from that system, who have children into that system. So it turns into not only just the students themselves, but the parents as well. And just in my experience talking to people and being a student, I found that level of parental involvement tends to have a lot to do with how well students do. You can have the most awesome teachers ever, but if parents are not involved and they don't care, the students don't tend to do as well.
Excellent.
I had something, because I was doing intervention in some of the alternative schools in Miami-Dade, and what I saw is kind of like the FCAT. The thing with the FCAT is that a lot of students were able to pass the math. They were having a lot of trouble with the writing, and what the teachers would actually do is actually have the students take the ACT writing, and they would actually do better on the ACT writing than they would do on the FCAT writing. And also, consequently, the alternative high schools, where a lot of the dropout rate, I'm sure that's where a lot of these dropout rates are coming from. It's kind of like a last resort school for students who have behavioral issues and whatnot. They actually went ahead and they were closed, all of them, in Miami-Dade. as a result of budget cuts and that sort of thing. And so I think the thing to ask, with not respective of this awesome panel that we have here, but what message are we sending as a community to these students when not only we create this, this exam that is more difficult than a college entrance exam in some cases, we are gonna, those alternative schools were also, they were placed on the same comparison as, let's say, Palmetto or Coral Gables. So of course, when they got evaluated, they received an F, so they're an F school. So not only the students are in alternative high school, they're in an F school, alternative high school. And then they end up being closed down as a result of, budget cuts and whatnot. So I think we have to also look at saying, what message are we sending to these kids that are most in need? Because I feel like, and then the intervention that I was involved in, it had to end also as well as the consequence. So I feel like there's multiple doors being slammed in the face, or I should say, there's just this kind of notion that, you don't matter sometimes to students, I feel. And I'm really thankful that we're at least just having this discussion, because I think, at the core of it, I think, the students obviously, they're the most important. And I do agree with the parental involvement, and in these cases where there's this really high dropout rate, they're just trying to get them with their diploma, because the parents, they could be incarcerated, they could have a record, they could be a single parent home, they could have a lot of things going on. And you imagine like a regular average, parent, everybody's always really busy, but sometimes in those particular populations, it's a very sensitive issue, so.
Interesting points. It sounds to me like we got a couple things going on here. We have student accountability, we have parental accountability, the idea of intervention, and it's also an idea of awareness, okay? The reason we're having a discussion with you guys today is for you guys to understand. Any education majors in the audience today? Any education majors? I'm an education major. We got one? Okay. This is important for us to think about, okay, in the discussion in regards to why we think we're great. We're obviously great in some areas, but we're not great in other areas. And I think I hand up over here.
Look, I am from Miami, and I've seen the schools change and every kind of program come and go, and the FCAT. And I think the majority of educators are great people. I think the majority of parents do the best they can. I think the kids are kind of thrown this way and that way. But I think the problem in some areas in Miami is poverty. And if you don't change the social climate, you're never going to change this. And one generation is going to beget another one and another and another. And it's endless.
It's a very good point. That idea of poverty and how that affects the household income. It may be really important for me to go to high school, but as important for me to leave high school as fast as possible to get to that job, to take care of my family.
Before moving here, I was living in a suburb of Kansas City. And the Kansas City public schools had a terrible reputation for years and years. And finally, the schools were not able to meet the national criteria, and they were shut down. The diplomas no longer mean anything anymore for the students who went there. And I myself went to a national model school, 2011 national model school in a different suburb, and I did not have support from my parents when I went to school throughout my childhood and my adolescence, and I come from a very low socioeconomic background, but I always went to a very good school with good teachers, and if there are good mentors, if there are people that are supporting you that are going to help you to reach your potential, then I think that will spell success.
Okay. Well, that brings up a great point. Another question I'm going to turn over to our panel that you sort of alluded to. This idea of mentorship. I think that's really, really important. So I'm going to turn to the panel and ask you guys this. How compatible would you say education and mentorship are? And of course, any one of you guys can take this one.
So, that's a great question. I think that when you look at the video and you reflect on the information that's presented in the article, I think that what we're all hearing, 65 years ago, there was a time when the greatest challenge that America faced as a nation was the rise of fascism and sort of how that was gripping Europe and choking out the opportunity for freedom, democracy, and everything that sort of associated with the rise of both Hitler's Reich and also Imperial Japan. And of course, in that scenario, we know that we were attacked, and there was a call really to the broader American public to get engaged in not only stopping war in Europe, but really this battle for sort of the longevity of humanity under sort of free values. And when you read this article and you reflect on the question of education and mentorship, you realize that we are very much at a similar moment as a country with respect to how we're losing ground in being the nation that we always were. And so within that, I sort of wrap to you in a bow the question of if you were 17 years old at the time when Pearl Harbor were bombed, and you were enlisted, and you were called to serve, it would have been a no-brainer around the notion of protecting America and protecting the values that we hold sacred in a time when military service was what was required to safeguard America's values. I think that at the moment that we're at right now, the question that I think you'll face from the coming generations is what did you do at a moment when there's that similar knock on the door with respect to America losing ground in everything that we have ever known in our parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents' generation. So I think the value of mentorship is huge because not every single one of us has to become an educator. My journey to arrive at my work at City Year, I was an entrepreneur, I'm a lawyer, grew up in Miami, but I recognized that everything that I wanted to do as somebody who launched a software company here, when I had just graduated from law school, the challenges I faced for the great part were really in accessing high potential young people that were qualified in the type of way to be globally competitive. And so mentorship is a big part of it. So we can be mentors in any varying amount of ways. You could do it within the concentration of a year in a program like the one that I'm a part of at City Year, or you can decide to deliberately be invested and engaged in the life of another person and feel the joy of what it is like to experience someone else have a big win. So I think it's a big part of education. And we heard from the young lady from the suburb outside of Kansas City. My sister went to UMKC, by the way. But we heard that mentors have a big role. So the expectations of what occurs within the schoolhouse, teachers who are challenged, urban poverty. These are factors which are structural and systemic. So we only have a way of addressing them by starting to wedge out little elements of it. And mentors and the role of mentorship, I think, is a big part of it.
Anybody else on the panel want to chime in?
I had just a couple of ideas about the mentorship process and how really we don't see our students in high schools even thinking about asking for mentors, which is, I think, the first kind of step is them understanding that they could probably learn or get some guidance from somebody who may even be just a year or 2 years older than they are. The concept of mentorship means that you're asking for somebody to help and guide you through a process, and that should be someone that you trust and somebody that you respect and you think has some experience or wisdom in a certain area, right? And a lot of times our students, unfortunately, don't, so the teachers may not be the person that they're going to go to, right? Because there may be trust issues or there may be, I want to do something that this teacher I don't think has the experience in. But if we start to shift the conversation, and this is what we've begun doing, is talking about, okay, your high school is a career and college is a career, and your education, if you look at that as a career, there are students who have been in your situation 2 or 3 years removed right from where you are. And so if we start trying to do that, we can really build the capacity in the schools for schools to do it in-house. As you stated, right, parental involvement is an issue. I forget who it was. One of you stated parental involvement is an issue. So we really do have to build the capacity in the schools to get that to happen. And we can do that. And we've seen leaders, seniors, or even juniors starting to reach back down to freshmen and talk about, when I was a freshman, I wish I would have done this differently or that differently, and that being very impactful. And then that, so you're addressing the trust issue, and they are actually somebody who's been there and done that, right? So that's just kind of how I was thinking about it, how it manifests in the schools itself that we're in.
All great points. I think you bring up a strong one between the two people we just mentioned before is the idea of mentorship. Who in here in the audience has ever actually gone up and said, I would like you to be my mentor? Anybody? People have done that before? Does anyone want to talk about what that process was like? What it was like for you?
Sorry, my voice is in the phone. I was part of a program called the JBJ Foundation. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before. Thank you. Hi guys, Evelyn. I was part of the JBJ Foundation program, and they basically chose 100 students out of a inner city elementary school, and they stuck with us throughout the educational career. And they promised us a scholarship if we could make it through high school and not drop out. Out of 100 of us, I believe 97 of us went to college all over the United States, and the only ones that didn't, very extenuating circumstances actually happened. Some of them even passed away, but out of 197 is a pretty staggering amount of students from the inner city. And all of us did not have parents that were involved, and all of us did not have the kind of money to show up to school or to go to certain events or whatever. But since they were drilling it into our heads from when we were in first and second and third grade, hey, there's a thing called college, and if you could finish what you're doing here for free, we'll pay for you to go there and support your family and make something beautiful out of something so difficult. Honestly, I am in FIU specifically because of that, and I don't think I would have been able to be here today if I didn't have that kind of mentorship. And when I made it to high school, I even involved myself in a program called AVID. I know you guys have heard of that, see that? And I went out of my way to, ask people questions that people did not normally ask. They just keep to themselves and, oh, well, I wonder this, I wonder that. But I only got that because of, that influence from when I was younger. You have to ask the questions to get an answer, and you cannot be afraid, and you cannot be, ashamed of not knowing something. And they did not teach us that when we were little kids. And it doesn't matter. Everybody does not have parents that are always going to teach them every single thing. But if your parents at least teach you, hey, if you're confused, ask why. That's just about it. You can make it anywhere if you ask a question. Education is important.
All right. Well, thank you. We appreciate that. That touches on a great point that I think our interim vice president for student affairs talks about right now here at FIU is telling our own story. I think that's really, really important. Is to understand the impact that we've had and what our education looks like, and then tell that story to other people. There's a lot of great going on here in our community, but yet we have articles that come out and say, this isn't happening. The education, it's not where it needs to be. So telling our own story, whether it's as an individual, as a program that you represent, or I'm here because of that, I think that's important. I think I saw a hand up over here.
Well, just to piggyback on what you were saying about stories, and the story that we tell ourselves about American history, and the story that we tell ourselves, and was backed up by evidence for at least one generation, maybe more, that the United States was number one, okay, and that we still see ourselves as number one. And we have a very strong contingent of American leadership today that will tell us the story that the reason why we're number one is because we have so many freedoms. And we have the ability to do things on our own, without government, without assistance of any kind, that we need to be set free in order to be able to exert the best that we have to offer. And yet, what I'm hearing in this conversation is a different story, which is that no matter who you are, really, no matter what walk of life you come from, but especially if you come from impoverished or challenged circumstances, you need nurturing. You need a mentor. You need an example. You need someone from somewhere, and it doesn't matter if it's within a family, or if it's an NGO, or if it's in a publicly funded school, someone to take your hand and lead you towards the preparation and the skills that you need to have in order to function today. So I just wonder, what are the implications for that in terms of politics, in terms of our economy? Which story is right? Are they both right? Can they coexist?
All great points. I think Obviously, we're here at an institution of higher learning. We have a resource base. We have a knowledge base. I think it's in our rights to be helping these great individuals up here in our community, turning around and using what we're good at, whether it's the medical school, whether it's the law school, whether it's education, and helping the people that do need that help. Questions from you guys. Thinking about the article, this idea of an American exceptionalism, that hubris that we definitely have about ourselves. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I'm actually not so sure about what you're saying about poverty is the key element of why students are going down the grade. Because if you think about it, students from other countries that are poorer than America are actually excelling better than we are. I think it's actually a matter of more discipline here because I came from a very poor family. When I came to this country, I didn't know English. I could barely communicate with my teachers. I could barely communicate with the students around me. And on top of that, we lived in a little one-bedroom house. Like, one bedroom was all it was. And in that bedroom, there was a kitchen, there was a dining area, a living room, everything, you know. And my parents were both working. My parents didn't have the time. But I was raised up with this perception that, you know, if you want to get further in life, you do have to study. And I think that now American children have it sort of easier than other countries would have. Because they get endless opportunities. They got public school. Over there in other countries, they don't have public school. Parents have to work twice as hard to get their kids to school. And here, the students, they got into this pop culture, into this culture where they say, you know, it's okay to be into it's okay to be doing this, it's okay to be slacking. Because eventually you might become famous. And kids are all following this little trend that's going on that, you know, oh, it's okay, you know, we could slack, eventually we'll become famous. I've had friends in high school that their excuse for not studying is, oh, I play the guitar so well, eventually I'll get discovered. And I just graduated high school like 2-3 years ago. So I know it's still going on. And my sister, her friends are still with that idea that one day they're going to be like little Kim Kardashians that are going to have all the money that they want available to them. And it's scary because most of the people around that school, the people that are supposed to, you know, the friends, people don't listen, children don't listen to the teachers. They go with the friends. When friends start disrespecting the teachers, friends start disrespecting their own parents, children are bound to do the same thing. And we build up excuses like, oh, they're poor. Poor children in poorer countries than this are actually making more of an academic, are excelling more in the academic level than we are. Parent involvement, yes, there has to be a lot of parent involvement. Because at the end of the day, if parents don't care, then children are not going to see why they should either. If parents are also okay with the circumstances they're living in, like in most poor cities, in most poor countries, I mean not poor countries, in most poor cities here in Miami, you'll see a mom carrying a whole bunch of kids, and she's okay with it. You don't see her trying to better herself. She's okay with living with the welfare money that she gets from the government. And children are going to grow up thinking, oh, you know what, eventually if all else fails, I'm going to get money from the government. I'm going to declare myself a disability. How many children are there right now that say, you know, I don't need to study, I'll just go to the government and pay disability money and they'll get it. You know, it's just, I think the children need to know what it is that's at stake. They need to understand. Because at the end of the day, you can't help somebody who doesn't see that they actually need help. And if children don't see, okay, you know what, I need to help myself, I need to get that help, then that, no matter how much help you give them, they're not going to take it because it's like they don't, according to them, they don't need it for what they see.
All very good points, and I think, yeah, in leaving off of that, the idea of discipline, obviously, is very, very important. The idea of accountability, again, and the idea of mentorship. We're talking about how students need that. That mentor could be a huge component of that. You talk about how, say, students nowadays maybe like, I'm going to be the next LeBron James. I'm going to be the next Kim Kardashian or whatever those may be. For every one person like that, there are tens of thousands of people who don't make it, who bank their entire life on that. And maybe the idea of having a mentor in your life is saying, you can focus on that, work hard, and it may get to you, but there's other things you need to have. Something like a backup plan. You know, and I have 7 years of college athletics experience. We teach them the same thing. You need to have a backup plan, okay? For every T.Y. Hilton, we had to have another 50 kids who won't play pro. What are you going to do when you graduate? Maybe it's give a year of service to City Year. Maybe go out and do Teach for America. Maybe do Peace Corps. Maybe do AmeriCorps somewhere else, AmeriCorps Vista. But what's that next level of what you're going to do to impact the community after that? I think I had a hand up over here. Yes.
Eric Dwyer, I'm a professor in the College of Education. I like what you just said about the mentorship and offering Plan Bs, but I'm going to take issue with what you said over here. Actually, I find it actually unbelievably disturbing, because I don't think it's appropriate to blame people that are in poverty for the lives that they have. Statistically, and I've studied this quite a long time, for every one person that has your experience, I can find 2 others who don't. And many of them never were able to get to the point where they're able to speak English enough to defend the way that you just did. And I think it's very important that we bear in mind, especially in a community like this, the degree to which people are successful or unsuccessful for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons that people are successful is indeed some parental involvement. And statistically, when we look at the studies that do that, we find that parental involvement is a place where someone can increase a grade, but it's not vital. This is where your mentorship becomes so important, because parents can't always be there, especially poor parents. And most poor parents really want their children to succeed. Why do we know this? We ask them, and we ask them in their home languages. So I don't think that your experience represents the majority of people that are in that position, and I think it's really incorrect to blame them for the situations that they are in. Having said that, it's interesting to look at some of the ways that people have done become successful, especially people who are doing in schools. Mentorship is one way. I think that the ethnic studies program in Tucson, which has been so bashed by the Department of Education in Arizona, is an excellent way. They have the statistics to show for it. And these are programs where students from cultures that are not congruent to those that are being tested by these high-stakes tests are able to showcase talents and intelligence in ways that then are reflected on those tests. They are able to show critical thinking that come through on multiple choice tests. And finally, the students that are most at risk at not graduating are fighting to graduate at a 93% level. So the politicians actually have what they want, and they still bother to bash the program because it's not culturally or linguistically congruent. So I want us to be really careful when we think about who we blame.
Very good points, and I think and it brings up a lot of very valid opportunities. One side, let's make sure and own our own experiences, and your experience may be different, but understanding where we all come from, I think, is important. Did you have a quick counter offer to that?
Yeah, I'm not blaming people for being poor. I know, trust me, I'm Hispanic. I have a family, I have friends that are Hispanic. Most of Miami is Hispanic, so everybody here knows that it's one Hispanic person. I know people that have struggled to get themselves to this country. You know, who have Cubans are constantly trying to get away, Colombians, people that are trying to escape from poverty that come here, and they have meager beginnings, and I respect those people. Like, I'm not blaming them for being poor, but I'm not blaming poverty for making kids slap off either. I'm not saying, oh, you're poor, it's your fault that you're poor. No, because I understand that when a Hispanic person comes here, it doesn't matter what degree. Doctors from Cuba come here, and it doesn't count. Engineers from other countries come here, and it doesn't count. That doesn't say, oh, you're not smart, and it's your fault that you're poor. That just says, you still have hope. You still can climb up. When a person, I understand completely that when a person comes to this country, they have to start from all the way at the bottom. But at the same time, I'm saying that it's all right. You can start all the way at the bottom, but you have to be willing to fight. Some people actually just come and they're not willing to fight. They're not even willing to put in their two bits into it, into bettering themselves. I don't blame people for being poor. Poor is something that's happening a lot right now. People could get fired the day after tomorrow and they end up poor. But I'm saying, whenever you're poor, whenever a hardship comes to your life, you always have that option of bettering yourself. You always have that option of, start from the bottom, pick yourself up, be better than that. But you have to have that motivation. If a poor person comes and maybe he was a doctor in Cuba, but he doesn't have that motivation to pull himself up there again, then he's not going to get out of that poor life.
Yeah. And these are great points, okay? This is also why it's amazing that we're in a college atmosphere, okay? The varying opinions, the opportunities for us to speak our minds and talk about that. Use this. You're on a college campus. It's important.
Just to pick up on what she's saying and a little bit tying it back to education,
I agree with you that if you have utilization, you will not succeed. But then again, going back to the main problem is if you don't have the parental counseling, the parental support, if you don't have the proper mentoring at your school or your teacher support, if there's not an educational support overall, and at home they don't teach you how to succeed yourself. If at home they don't teach you how to have that inner courage to be better in the future, then you're just not going to succeed. And what happens? You end up dropping out from school. I agree with you, and I hear you. I also agree with you that we cannot blame it on just one thing. But the main focus here is on education, and what are we doing to increase the dropout rates, to increase the enrollment rates in college? There are different answers to what's the best solution, but I think that it starts with that principle of having that backbone support.
That's a good point. So I'm gonna have a couple more questions, and I'm gonna ask you guys one, and I'm gonna ask one back for the panel, just in the instance of time. I know we can probably go on for hours and hours and days on this topic, and that's one of the reasons why we had this. So I'm gonna turn around back to you guys. I want to hear what you guys' thoughts on this one is. Is it possible to change the culture that we sort of have in place to respect teachers the same way we respect a doctor, a lawyer? Do you think that we can change that culture to begin respecting those teachers the same way we respect that person with that JD after their name, that Esquire?
Well, to reference the article, they actually made a really kind of interesting point about Finland in this article. I don't know if you all actually read all of it. About how their education system wasn't so great, and they looked at what the U.S. was doing, and they said, okay, how can we improve? And part of the improvement was raising the education standards for teachers. So instead of it just being a bachelor's program, it turned into a master's program that was more academically, rich. So that the citizenry who was looking at these teachers weren't saying, oh, glorified babysitter and all this stuff that you kind of hear this derogatory towards teachers. And so they were saying, okay, these teachers know what they're talking about. They've proven themselves academically, so I'm going to respect this person academically to teach my children instead of just treating them like babysitters. And that changed a lot of the attitude in Finland towards the teachers themselves from the parents and from the students, at least according to this article. And I think that we're going towards that. I'm not an education major, so admittedly I'm rather ignorant on it, but I do know that there is a certain segment of the population. I have more experience working with lawyers that feel like what they do requires more education, more critical thinking skills, more general academic skill. Whether that has merit or not, that is an opinion that is pretty prevalent, at least amongst many professionals. And I think that having that sort of, instead of just saying, okay, well, a bachelor's degree and all this other stuff and continuing education, they have to do continuing education too, at least lawyers do. Having it be considered, maybe marketed or, I'm not an expert, but having the actual academic nature of teaching elevated as opposed to, kind of the way that it feels as an outsider from my perspective, especially for non-college education, which is more, there's more the emphasis of for the children without an emphasis of, okay, these are academically, on point people that totally know what they're talking about and they're helping children. And I think that that might change some people's attitudes towards it. I also think that it may help as far as, people's willingness to pay teachers. Because a lot of people consider teachers to be rather low skill, which is ridiculous, but it's true. So they don't want to pay them. And then people don't want to do it, and it's kind of a cycle. At least that's kind of what I've seen.
That's a good point.
Just in the suburbs, mostly.
Okay. Anybody else in this idea of trying to change our culture and looking at a teacher like a Juris Doctor, like a PhD?
It's a tough situation because public school teachers are indeed public servants. And in this country, the trend has been that there's kind of a social bargain. You work for a city or you work for a state or the federal government, you're going to have less of an ability to climb up the financial ladder, but you're going to be taken care of for life in terms of your benefits and your retirement. Okay, and folks who work for the city or the state or the government at some level are people who are doing it as a calling. They feel that they're called to service. Unfortunately, that is now taken advantage of, and also just practically speaking, I mean, in this state and in most states, public education is a majority of the state budget. The state budget is shrinking. Public education must shrink. So there's some structural issues in terms of being able to remunerate teachers to the level of, quote, respect, you get what you pay for sort of thing, that we think that they deserve. I mean, if we're going to show our respect in a tangible way, it's gotta be with payment somehow. If not, it has to be. So, I don't know, that's
Good point. Okay, one more point.
In a hospital or a legal firm or any professional organization, if there's problems going on, I don't think the first thing everybody does is say, fire the doctors, cut the medical staff, cut the doctors, cut the professionals, get rid of the lawyers. But the first thing you hear in education is get rid of the teachers, fire the teachers, cut the budget for the teachers. Look at they get too much retirement benefits and so on and so forth. And
That was from the computer.
I just don't see the common people in America who are following the leads of the political power that consider education as important as other professions when they are just as professional and, in my opinion, as important or more important.
Good point. So I'm going to turn it back to the panel. I have one final question for them. And if we have a little bit of time, I may ask you guys and open up to some final questions. So I'm going to combine a couple here. So we're talking about this idea we need to think about the looking at teachers differently, looking at this idea of teaching to tests. I think that's something especially in Florida we have. So in your guys' opinion, what happens if we don't evolve? And is it possible to remake the structure and focus more on teachers instead of tests?
Well, just answering what you were speaking about, and you were speaking about paying teachers more and just treating them at the level of respect that they need to. A structural thing, in my opinion, when I was thinking about this, one thing that could really shift just what happens in the schools, and it's something that I think could easily, well, I think it could easily happen, but maybe the powers that be won't think it's so easy. Schools don't get their budgets until like July, like the end of July, and school here starts 2 weeks later. Which means that then they're making teacher selections way into like first, second, third week of August. School has already started sometimes and they still haven't even figured out scheduling what teachers are teaching what. And so I think if one structural thing that could happen that could really show respect for teachers and really giving them time to plan and giving them time to really figure out what tools they're going to need and organize themselves, is move that budgeting piece up. If principals got their budgets in April, that would make a huge difference, or even May. To what actually we see happening in the schools, and I know you probably have witnessed that as well. We have to wait to even partner with the principals and the teachers we're working with until way after school has started to start planning and figuring out how we're going to work with them, and it just sets everyone back. There's a lot of confusion, and the principals and the teachers, they all get very good at being very flexible and playing their part and making it work anyway. But at the end of the day, it's the school, the students that end up suffering, right? Not getting a teacher who's really even the best teacher for that content area, not getting a teacher that's well prepared, getting a teacher who could be possibly frustrated about the many changes that have gone on at the beginning of the school year. So I think something structurally like that I think is something that, shifting it a month earlier, I think that's so doable, and yet it doesn't happen.
Anybody else?
So while I'm no longer on FIU's payroll, I feel like I need to also kind of wave the Panther flag here. How many folks in this room are aware, outside of faculty, of the partnership that your home school FIU has with Miami-Dade County Public Schools? It's called the Access Partnership. Anybody know about that? So Northwestern is one subcommittee, so that's one of 11 work groups. So I will tell you that in terms of making an investment in changing the culture in this district, it is something that FIU is tremendously committed to. Your colleague, and if you want to check that out, go to the Office of Engagement's website, and it's called the Access Partnership, 11 work groups. But you've got great work going on here. You've got folks from the College of Education really that have specialty in how to teach in urban environments. There's a national movement right now that if you want to be a math and science teacher, that you should be a math and science graduate. So you have some content area expertise, which on one level makes sense, but you've got your good folks in the College of Education standing up, waving the banner and saying, that's great, but if they can't teach it, what good is that? So they're beginning to do that. Your College of Education here is in a partnership with Arts and Sciences and Engineering, I believe, to really do some innovative work around how the STEM disciplines are taught. So I would encourage you to check out all the great work, and even the folks in education, they're even flying to the Dominican Republic to help out schools there that, in terms of teacher development. So, you know, check out what FIU is doing to help this out. The comment I would make about, so if we don't evolve, it's a lose-lose proposition, plain and simple. How do we do it? I think we have to be strategic. So obviously my organization has not been in Miami yet, but I think both of my colleagues here would say that their presence in Miami has grown and evolved dramatically from day one, from where they were focused and how they were focused and how they looked, to what they have become today. And that is because they have a defined strategy for how to move the needle of progress, all right? And I think the other thing that you have to, that is going to require, that will turn the needle is you have to be innovative and you have to be courageous, right? If you've ever heard our superintendent talk, regardless of whether you agree with all of his action items or not, he will tell you that he does his job knowing that one day he's going to be fired. He does his job in a fearless way. He says no superintendent in this country ever leaves on their own terms. Eventually the schools don't do what, don't meet expectations of parents or community, and they all get fired. So he has this kind of liberating experience that he wants to be innovative, he wants to be fearless, and he wants to make the decisions that he feels are necessary and the investments that are necessary with the finite resources he has to move the needle on progress. The other thing I would just point your attention to, if you don't know about it, look at your Miami-Dade County School Boards. They have a $1.2 billion government bond coming up in the next election to improve facilities and improve technology and try to move the facilities to where they should be to make learning environments more conducive. So those would just be anything to add.
Yeah, I think that to just sort of sound in as well, and I agree, I think the focus needs to be not only just on how does society view the role of teachers, but how do we get more stakeholders at the table talking and prioritizing education. I referenced a little bit earlier that in my own journey to the work that I'm now a part of, it began as a technology entrepreneur and then a period of time in the field of law as a lawyer. And about a year and a half ago, I was having a conversation with a former colleague of mine in India that's a really, really big engineering company owner, big in sort of everything we think about, the Indian miracle, Bangalore and all of that. And he was talking with me, partially challenging me about why did I transition to the work that I'm doing, and sort of started a nice conversation. And he said, well, is it difficult for you to engage the business leadership in your community about the work you're trying to do at City Year and the work of why education is so important? And I was like, yeah, it's really hard. If you run a nonprofit, a bulk of your time is spent going out there trying to raise resources. And he says, I'm going to tell you something that you should share with every business leader, every politician, every leader that you meet in your community that's going to guarantee that you get the resources you need. And I was like, well, I'm like all ears. And I said, when you meet a business leader and they say to you that education is not a priority, tell them that as an Indian entrepreneur, that my belief is that that's fine. If America doesn't want to prioritize and business leaders don't want to invest in education, then they should get comfortable that when America returns to the moon, that there'll be an Indian restaurant there. So, that's sort of, again, the context of sort of American exceptionalism and everything that we're talking about, is that the boldness that Fletch referenced? Is that the degree to which we as a society want to say education matters, teachers matter, and finding the dollars to prioritize making that job one, then we all have, we can vote, in this not a political comment, but we can vote via our actions. We can say that we are going to ourselves become purposefully engaged in this struggle for a better America, And whether it's just even in parochial interest in sort of our own backyard, or even in our own in our own house. I mean, my wife and I, we have 2 kids, and I'm one of the only dads that's involved in the parent association. So it's a little odd, being one guy kind of crossing into that gender divide, where oftentimes it's moms who are engaged in certain parent associations. But I do it because it's part of walking the walk. I can't say get involved in education, resource it through public dollars, do this, and then myself not take a sense of personal accountability. So that's all what we need to do. Is not just, the teacher component is huge. Great teachers, resourcing them is fine. But making education the #1 conversation, because every CEO in Miami should know, and the high school graduation rate here should be as important to them as any other number in their annual report. If they really believe in a global knowledge-based economy, because the only resource we have is what we have between our ears in a global knowledge-based economy. There's a great line that the New York Times op-ed columnist Thomas Friedman said. He wrote a piece a while ago, and Friedman's on an up or down. You can agree with him maybe 55% of the time, or the other way around. He said that when he was a kid, his parents would tell him, eat your lunch, because if not, there's some kid starving somewhere and they would love to have your lunch. And he says now he tells his kids, do your homework, because if not, there's some kid doing their homework that will have your dinner if you don't do your homework. So that sense of, it's a broader sense of accountability that we have to build within ourselves as well as within the leadership in our society.
Great points. And we're gonna wrap it up now in the interest of time. Make sure you guys get on the way. I know you got classes to get to. I'm gonna leave you with one final thing, one final thought. This is a riddle, so I'm gonna ask you guys a question. Okay? So there were these 12 frogs, right? And these 12 frogs were all together hanging out, discussing urban topics, discussing ideas of education or whatever it may be. And they were sitting on a log. Okay? And then these 12 frogs decided to jump into the river. It's Miami, it's hot, it's humid outside. They decided to jump in the river. My question to you guys is, how many are left on the log? How many are left on the log? Don't be shy. Well, my question to you is, how many are left on the log? So you're saying none. Okay? Okay. The actual answer is all 12 of them. Okay? And the reason why? There's a huge difference between saying you're going to do something and then actually doing it. Okay? There is a major event coming up in November. You guys may have heard of it, November 6th. It's called a presidential election. Okay? Take some time. We're not telling you who to vote for, but get involved. Think about it. Think about these education issues and make sure and have an impact. So clap it up for our panel. And then clap it up for yourselves for a great discussion today. Thank you, everybody.